All right, we're here today with Jarrad Katz. What's up, Jarrad?
How you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
No, of course, man. Appreciate you coming on. I know you're one of the very few people who got out of the hospitality industry early and absolutely crushing it in life. So we wanted to get you on and share your story.
Sounds good. Happy to do it.
So let's talk. I always like to start in the beginning. Like, how'd your hospitality career start? What got you into the workforce? What jobs did you hold?
I was pretty much born into hospitality. I don't know if you remember, my dad owned a large catering company. And he did all the backstage catering for all the concerts in Phoenix. He did MGM Grand, Mandalay Bay, Hollywood Bowl. So from an early age, I was in the hospitality business. I moved to Las Vegas in 1999 to go to UNLV. First weekend here, our good friend Chaim took me to Utopia. Had a long night on the patio, and that's it. I was hooked. So 18 years old is when I started, and ended up opening the Buca de Beppo on Flamingo while I was still living in the dorms. Worst job ever, but it paid the bills while I was going out every night. My nightlife career started probably with Bo Carlin at Rhino, and I was handing out flyers while I was going to regular nightclubs just so I could get into Rhino for free. And then that evolved into him paying me, and I sort of became his UNLV guy, handing out flyers for him. And then that evolved into, man, I don't know if you remember, we did a night at Tsunami at the Venetian with Chris Hornsby, and I was one of the partners in that, and I was checking IDs at the door. I was 19 years old with a fake ID. All my friends from the dorms were coming, and I was just looking at their real ID and letting them in. And, I from there got a job as a promotions manager at C2K, both pre the original C2K, and then it closed when it reopened. I was there with Adam Ward and was his right hand man and flyer guy for a number of years. And he knew I was underage, but we never talked about it. And he came to my 21st birthday and he's like, "Now you're going to be honest with me, young man." And once I turned 21, I was already pretty well connected. I mean, my job as a promotions manager, I was out 6, 7 nights a week. I was the guy with the handful of flyers, putting them on all the tables, pissing off all the other clubs, trying to drive business to C2K and any other. I did, you name all the special events that came in town. I helped Brian Foster with a lot of things, and it was a good time. So fast forward to when I'm 21, which is 2002. I had been going to Studio 54 for 3 years, 3 nights a week, and they hired me as a porter or a rover. So studio was so busy that there were the bartenders that were kind of like CEOs, and then they had their bar back, which was a quasi bartender because they poured drinks most of the night, and then they had a rover that roved between two bars, which was effectively the bar back for the bars, because the bar backs, you wanted them pouring drinks all night because the more drinks they pour, the more money the whole bar made. So I started as a rover at 21, and Travis Hunsaker found out my first week that I had just turned 21. He's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You've been coming here for 3 years." And that was like the reigning joke. And I ended up staying at studio for 5 years. The whole time I was at studio, I was also DJing. I was the opening DJ at SRO on Sunday nights in the hip hop room for Hollywood. I was very ingrained in the scene as a whole. But once I got behind the bar, that was it. I mean, there's something special about being behind the bar as opposed to the door or a flyer guy. DJ was pretty magical too. I never made it big as a DJ, but there's something about being behind that bar that's a total confidence booster. I mean, you never had this problem, but I was never able to just walk up to a girl and talk to her. But when I'm behind that bar, I was a total different person. It was wild how that 3 feet of wood can boost your confidence. I ended up leaving studio in 2007. I think I was one of 4 people at the time. The club was 10 years old. I was one of 4 people that left on their own, which was pretty remarkable for a nightclub. The turnover was very low. It was a special place, a special time. There will probably never be another club like that again. And why I say that is that the managers there was a couple turnovers in managers, but the managers never really wrote us. They knew that we were there to do our job. They, as long as we showed up on time and left on time, or we had somebody covering our shift, there were never any questions asked. I was lucky enough to get bar back at bar 2, which was the bar on the right when you walked in by the downstairs bathrooms, which was the high volume bar. And I had a 5-day shift, and we had like 3 on-call people that wanted my shifts at all times. So it was like we were running our own bar, and nobody screwed up because we were making a ton of money and we had all the freedom in the world, and pretty hard to replace. I don't think the bars you worked at had that kind of freedom.
No, they didn't.
So that was the end of my nightlife career. I mean, the last 2 years, well, I did bartend at a Paradise Cantina for 2 years after that, which was a great transition. My last year in, call it nightlife, because I wouldn't consider Paradise Cantina nightlife. It's hospitality. I was burning it at both ends. I really wanted to get into real estate. We can get into later how I got into real estate and the defining moments that got me there. But that last year, I was giving away my Tuesday, Wednesday shift at studio, but I was doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which was 9 p.m. to 4 or 5 a.m. I was doing 3 shifts at Paradise Cantina, which was 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. That's a happy hour shift. Sometimes I was doing the 4 a.m. to noon shift on Saturday night, Sunday morning, which was a good shift because all your buddies from Hard Rock would come in when they got off. But Fridays were particularly special. I would go to work from 9 to 5 in the real estate office, change in my car, do 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. bartending shift at Paradise Cantina, change in my car and work from 10 to 5 at studio. And by the end of that shift, I mean, what is that? A 20-hour shift? My hips would hurt. And I was only 25 years old. And it was just, I was beating the shit out of myself. But I had a goal to get out of nightlife, and I was used to the money. I was used to the income, and it takes good 3 years to get there in real estate. So I was doing it. And they finally told me that they weren't going to allow us to give our shifts away without putting in paperwork at studio. So you had to work all 5 shifts. If you were going to give it away to an on-call person, you had to put in paperwork, and it just became a pain in the butt. And it was sort of a sign for me. I also ran into a bartender and blew out my knee. So I foolishly quit because it screwed up my payment for the knee injury. But that's all right. It was the best decision I ever made at that time in my life. And I actually had to have our good friend Brad Gold write my resignation letter for me because I was ready but not ready, and I didn't want to do it. So we sat at the bar at Paradise Cantina and wrote it together, and I brought it in, and my bar manager said to me, "I'm disappointed because you're a great employee, but I'm not surprised. Nobody ever expected you to last as long as you did here." Because I always told everybody that it was a job, not a career. And the second it was not fun anymore was when it was going to be time to leave. And that happened. It wasn't fun anymore. It was exhausting. You grow almost hateful towards people in that business. Somebody walks up, they have a foreign accent, you're like, shit, I'm not getting a tip. which is not nice. It's not who I am. I no longer feel that way, by the way, but you just become bitter, especially when you're doing that kind of volume.
Yeah, it's very, very true. I mean, we both work very high volume places, and a lot of people say, like, what are the good things you like about it? The people. What are the bad things you like about it or you hate about it? The people. When you mix people, especially here in Vegas, when people get off that plane, they just, they turn into different people. They think it's like the wild, wild west. They can act like an asshole. They can treat you like crap. They can throw money at you, and just, it becomes a grind. It really does.
We had to remind ourselves on a regular basis that these people saved for their entire lives to have one dream weekend in Las Vegas that was something that we did every single day.
Yeah. And that's what, like, we're so used to, like, especially bottle service and VIP, and you can walk past 1,000 people in line, rock right up to the front door and shake people's hands. Like, hey man, how you been? Walk right in. You felt like a king, or you felt like a god or whatever. And people save up months and months to live for one night, what we did on a daily, weekly basis.
And we thought nothing of it. So I had to constantly remind myself how special that was, how lucky we were. And I got to do it through college.
Yeah. That's amazing. So how old were you when you got out? Because you left 54 when it was still cranking, it was still moving. I mean, you could have wrote it out for another 10 years.
Right, a couple of years. I think they closed in 12. Um, I was there 5 years, 2002 to 2007. And it was, I could have stayed, but it was time. You know, it wasn't fun anymore for me. I do miss the people. The people that worked there were very special. You know, there were one or two that I would probably rather not even say hi to if I walked by them on the street, but I think that's anywhere. But I would say 90% of them, it was a special time, a special place with very special people. And everybody showed up, did their job, worked hard, played hard. I can't tell you how many weekends we would get off work and buzz straight to San Diego and go deep sea fishing or go to a Chargers game, spend the weekend. We would get off work countless times and go fishing in Duck Creek, or I had that condo in Bryan Head. We'd buzz up there. So there were the last 2 years. The last year I was burning it at both ends and pretty much worked 70 hours a week, every week, maybe even 80. The year before that was the year I graduated college. And I told myself, all right, Jarrad, you're going to have a year of fun before you get serious. So that year I had bought that condo in Bryan Head, and I would go almost every weekend. We'd get off work on Sunday at 6, 7 in the morning. We'd buzz up there, take a nap. Half the time I didn't even ski. We would just, binge watch shows, sit by the fire, chill. Tuesday would come around. I'd call the on-call person to see if they want my shift. Wednesday would come. I'd call the on-call person, come back, work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, then do it again. I went to Europe that year. It was just a year where I had no school, nothing else but bartending and fun. And I'm so happy I had that year. The next year was when I decided to make that commitment. Well, there was a defining moment during that year of fun where one of my closest friends, Isaac, who's an attorney in San Diego, at the time was an intern with the court system. And he was at the bar, and I was probably a half a bottle of Jaeger deep. It was a normal weekend night while I was working. And he said to me, you make more money than double the amount of money that I do. And I'm an attorney. And, I was young and immature at the time. And I said, yeah, that's right. I'm glad I didn't go to law school. And he was like, hold on a minute, Jarrad. Let's be honest here. I'm at the start of my career. You're at the peak of your career. There is no other bar in Las Vegas where you will have a 5-day shift with this kind of flexibility and make this kind of money with this much freedom. You've capped out. Congratulations. And I walked away from him that night and I was like, holy shit, he's right. There's no further growth from me. This is it. And I've heard your conversations with some of the other guests on your show. And I looked around at some of the other bartenders, great guys, but I was like, what the hell are they going to do if this place closes? Where are they going to go? Right? They're going to be a service well bartender. They're all union, so they're going to get another job. But is this it for me? Did I go to college for this? And from that moment on, it sort of lost its luster. It wasn't fun anymore because I realized that I wasn't going to grow anymore. And I went on a trip to Israel with another one of our friends, Ophir, who I believe you know. And we were sitting on the beach. Now, my friends were really supportive. My family was really supportive. I don't ever remember getting any pressure from anyone of when are you going to get out of nightlife. It was really me being hard on myself. And my dad asked me a couple times, but they were really supportive. There wasn't much pressure. And I was sitting on the beach with Ophir in Eilat, Israel. And I turned to him and said, I think I'm ready. And he's an attorney also, by the way, and a big business guy. And his family owned a real estate company. And I said, I'm ready to get out of nightlife and start my career. And I'd really like to intern with somebody in commercial real estate. And he said, oh my God, I thought you would never ask. So apparently this was a big thing with my close-knit group of friends of, Jarrad's having a great time, but is he ever going to get out? Because he's better than this. And we went home and I interviewed with his brother and sister at Remax Commercial and their dad. And, I said to their dad, I graduated college, but I don't feel like I retained anything from it. I don't feel like I have a knowledge base for business acumen. And he said, you'd be really surprised. Once you get in here and start working, you're going to hear a lot of these trigger words and you're going to remember them. And you're only going to get better and better. And at the time, you talk about mindset and mindfulness and focus. I could not have been less focused than I was at that point in my life. I could barely get through an email and respond because I was just all over the place. I have terrible ADD as it is, but now I've learned how to control it and how to, shut my door and focus on one thing at a time. At that point in my life, I was a disaster. And that next year working for them, when I was working at night and during the day, focus was not my friend. It is today. But at that point in my life, I didn't know when to be awake, when to be asleep. I was constantly hungover, whether I drank or not, just because of the lack of sleep and the weird hours. And what a difference 10 years make, I can tell you. I'm a totally different person today, or I guess it's 14 years. But I was lucky enough when I left Studio 54 that Brad gave me 3-4 shifts, as many as I wanted at the cantina, which was the perfect transition into a daytime job because I worked 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. I was home early enough to sleep and start my day the next day. And it basically gave me enough income to where I didn't have to go to the ATM. And I left the cantina in 2009, which was, I joked that that's when I got off the nipple and I had to get serious because there was no other income coming in. Oh, and by the way, the market crashed a year before that. So that was fun.
Yeah, I remember that as well. I'm still recovering from 2008.
Yeah. I went on my own in commercial real estate, and I partnered with Chaim at the time. And we had a pretty good year in 2008. We sold a couple large land parcels to a big crane company that was building City Center, which is now bankrupt. They actually lost the land a year later. And I'll never forget, I do think it's important that I mention that I started dating my wife that year. And it's kind of hard to date somebody that's working 70, 80 hours a week. I think she was proud that I was working hard to try to get out of nightlife, but I don't think it would have been as easy to leave the nightclub if I hadn't fallen in love with someone and had a reason to go home every night. Before that, I was going to after hours when I got off. There was no reason to go home. There was nobody at home except for my roommates, and I would have rather been in the nightclub, or they were with me in the nightclub. So, and you knew all of them as well. She gave me a purpose or a reason to leave the nightclub, and that helped. And today we're married with 2 kids and living a totally different life. And what it really comes down to, the biggest difference is quality of life. I miss, if you asked me what I miss the most, it's when I left work, and I didn't have to check emails. I didn't have to check in. Today, I'm always answering my phone. I'm always answering emails. Now I do a good job of setting expectations that I'm home with my kids at night and I don't work on the weekends. But if it's a big enough deal, I'm there when they need me.
Yeah, and that's the difference of the transition too. Is bartending, you're making great money, but once you clocked out, you were done. You didn't bring your homework with you. You didn't have emails, meetings. You didn't have any of that stuff. You clock in, you work, you clock out, you're done.
I had plenty of nightmares. Did you ever have the nightmare where you woke up in the middle of the night and forgot to close down your bar?
Yes. I had a lot of nightmares about bartending with certain people.
Like a growth on the side of your head.
And trying to get to everybody. Yeah, dude. I've had a lot of nightmares in my bartending career.
Did I clean my bar? Did I lock up the liquor? Did I,
Yeah, I've done that. So going back for a minute, one thing that we haven't really touched on with other people is like the relationship aspect. Like being in nightlife, and especially in nightclubs and stuff, holding a solid relationship is really hard because, there's, especially in Vegas, there's so much, opportunity. There's so much temptation. There's so much working different hours and, everything else. That how many people do you know that really had long lasting relationships while working in nightlife?
I could tell you, I had a couple that I wish didn't last as long as they did.
I think we all agree with that.
I don't know why I stuck around. Convenience, boredom, I don't know, but it's hard. It's really hard. You really have to be in a relationship with somebody that's also in the industry, that understands the hours and the demands. And I was lucky enough to do it at a time before they made you have outings and guest lists. We never had any of those requirements. If we had an outing, it was just because we wanted to go out together and have fun. There was no requirement for that. If they would have required that, I probably would have left a lot sooner than I did. But once I started dating Amy, she never pressured me. She knew that I was doing what I had to do to get by and take care of my household and pay my bills while I was trying to get out. But when it was time, it was time. And our relationship definitely blossomed after that because I was home every night. At the latest, I was home at 10:30. Or if I did the crazy grave shift at Cantina, I still went to bed with her. I just left at 3:30 in the morning and came home at 12:30. But yeah, it's very hard. I can't say that I had many healthy relationships when I worked in the nightclub. I had a lot of toxic relationships before bartending, when I was DJing, when I was promoting. There's maybe one healthy relationship that was someone from college that was older than me, and I was probably the toxic one because I wanted to go out every night and she wanted to settle down, and we just decided that that wasn't going to work, and that was pretty amicable split. The rest of them, it's tough.
Yeah, that's one thing that a lot of these talks have led to too. It's kind of like the toxic side of nightlife and the whole industry and everything else too. The different lifestyle and the unhealthy relationships and the unhealthy drinking and eating
Yeah.
and drug abuse and gambling and everything else.
Yeah, it's a fast life. That's why when we look at the bartenders that were in their 40s, and I'm like, what are these guys going to do? I mean, these are wonderful people. That most of them are skilled tradesmen, really intelligent. They were much more mature than me, and that they got up early, went to the gym, sort of had productive days before they came to work. They figured out how to have that balance. I never figured that out. There were nights I'd get off work and go to Dre's and come home at 10 in the morning and sleep until 7, 8 p.m., take a shower and go back to work. I wasn't as hardcore as you. I don't think I ever stayed out and then went straight back to work.
I don't advise that. That hurt.
I always had to have that balance because I would, even before Studio 54, when we were just partying, I would go home, go to sleep, go to school, and then go back. And Eric and all those guys would still be going, or Chris Hornsby and Hollywood, all those guys, and I would start again with them. But I could never go days at a time because I had responsibilities. Thank God. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened.
No, I remember me and Eric in college, we had multiple classes together, and we'd be, we'd go out partying and then we'd go to school and like be passing out in class. Like, dude, what are we doing?
I definitely did that a couple times. And I remember you're in conversations with some of the other folks. It was so easy. We were so good at bartending that it didn't matter how tired we were or if we were sick, which is another subject. We would just go through it and just put our heads down, drink Red Bull, whatever, and never skipped a beat. But mentally and physically, we were beat. I think I had a sinus infection for 3 years straight, and my doctor wanted to do a CAT scan because I was always sick. But 100% was the hours and the secondhand smoke. When I left the nightclub, I was sick. Like I've been sick maybe twice a year since then. It was 100% that smoke.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard, I had to have my tonsils taken out too because I was getting strep all the time. I think it's because like all the smoke and all the stuff I was taking in, my tonsils were so inflamed that it would just hold all that bacteria in there. And ever since I got them out, I'm sick maybe once a year, maybe.
And how many nights did you put in a 12-hour bartending shift where your break was maybe grabbing a sandwich while you were walking and then downing a bottle of water and going right back at it?
A lot.
We weren't made to do that.
No. And then I was so starving after work that I'd swing into the closest drive-through of, Taco Bell, Del Taco, Jack in the Box, whatever was on the way.
Mm-hmm. It was a different time. I'd say I miss those times the most just because it was an innocent time. The responsibilities were minimal. If I decided I wanted to sleep all day the next day, I could sleep all day the next day. I didn't have to answer to anyone. You fast forward to today, I have 45 employees. I have clients I answer to. I have a team of 3 who I lead and answer to as well. I have a responsibility to them and their families. I have a wife and 2 children. There's no sleeping all day. If I decide I want to go out and hurt myself, I'm up at 7 in the morning with my kids and I'm going the whole day. So the only person it hurts is me. I wouldn't change it for the world. My quality of life is so much better than it was then. But I do miss the innocence and the freedom of that time in my life. But I have to look at it like that was a special time in my youth. I wouldn't change it for the world. I don't think there's a thing I would do differently. I don't even think I would save money differently. Um, Obviously, I should have. Let's be honest, but I just don't think I would. I gave myself that time, and I allowed myself to have that time. But I also told myself this is a job, not a career, and enjoy it while you can.
And that's great. That's one of the things that's super commendable about you and your story is that, you know, you knew going in that you weren't going to get stuck in it, and you knew you had a shelf life, and you were able to stick to that and get yourself out.
It wasn't easy though. Like I said, I had to work 3 jobs to do it, but it's important that you do. And you know what? There's nothing wrong if you're a bartender and you love bartending and you're still excited about it. And you wake up every day, I'm excited to go to work. There's nothing wrong with it. What a great career. And I'm so happy that I had that skill set so that I could bartend happy hour shifts to get me to where I needed to get through this career. When I left Studio 54, I had a good year. And then Amy and I got married. We went on our honeymoon, and I turned on the TV in Greece. All markets crashed, all banks seized funding, real estate markets in a downward spiral. And all I could do was just turn the TV off because I had 10 more days in Greece and there was nothing I could do about it. And when I came home, I did 60% of the amount of income, and I did like 3 times the amount of deals the next year. You know, in our business, you're paid on the gross value of the lease. So if you're doing a 10,000 square foot lease and it's a 5-year lease, so call it $1 a foot, it's $120,000 a year times 5 years, 600 grand, whatever that is, times 3% is 18 grand. The next year, we're doing 1-year leases at 50 cents a foot. So you could imagine how many more transactions I would have to do to get to that income. I'm grateful for that. I learned how to do this business in a really hard, impossible time. A lot of people didn't make it. So now I look at the business differently, and I'm grateful for the economy and the market that we're in now. But I'm prepared if that happens now because I went through that.
How long were you doing both? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
One year, all 3 jobs, and then 2 more years, real estate and Paradise Cantina. So that was 2009. I left Paradise Cantina. So I'm 12 years full-time real estate now, high quality of life. I control my hours. Perfect example. We were chatting about this last night. A lot of my friends put their kids in private school post-COVID or during COVID because they didn't want them in the house. We decided that we were going to keep our kids in public school, do the homeschooling, the virtual schooling. And instead of spending that money on private school, we bought a motorhome and a Jeep that we tow behind the motorhome. And our kids are at the table doing virtual learning. I'm sitting on my couch on my laptop working. Nobody knows we're not at home unless we tell them. And my wife drives, and we're doing Yellowstone, Grand Tetons, Park City, Jackson, Wyoming, Big Bear. We spent a week in Rocky Point, Mexico, and we're not skipping a beat. It's like I'm not off work, but we're showing our kids the world. And that's one grateful thing I am about COVID and the flexibility of my career. I couldn't do that if I was bartending because I had to be in a fixed place for a fixed time. And it's amazing the flexibility that I have now, which I created, I suppose. You know, I don't pat myself on the back much. I always think forward. What can I do more? What can I do better? And I'm grateful for having this conversation with you because I don't often look back at what I overcame and what I've built and where I am today compared to where I was then.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And it just goes to show like you have to go through that sacrifice stage in order to, you know, live the life that you really want to live. And you made it happen. One of my favorite quotes is, you know, live a couple of years like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't.
My last year as a full-time bar back at Studio 54, I wrote down my tips every night in a planner, in a handwritten planner.
I used to do that too.
And the last year I made $106,000 in cash tips and probably another 20 or so in hourly.
There's a statute of limitations on IRS, so you don't.
Yeah, we were allocated $10 an hour on our wages, so we wouldn't get audited, but we definitely made more than that. But that was a deal that the union made with the IRS at the time. So the next year in real estate, I made 22,000 my first year in real estate. And, you know, when we're recruiting new agents here, I always tell them, how much money do you have saved up? How much stamina do you have? Because it's going to take a good 2-3 years before you're making a living. And I'm not talking about killing it. I'm talking about a living. It takes a good 2 to 3 years. Today, I'm making 4 or 5 times what I made bartending consistently. And I'm off every night and I'm off every weekend. And I probably am out of town 2 months every year. But that did not come without sacrifice, as you're saying, in those first few years.
That's awesome, man. It's super inspirational. So guys, if you're listening, it takes work. You got to put in the work and to get the rewards.
Mm-hmm. And treat people well. You know, don't burn bridges. I'm still just as close today as I was with most of the people in nightlife that I was back then. I don't talk to them every day. I don't see them every day. And a lot of that has to just do with scheduling and priorities and family. But there's some of those bartenders, Mike Lett, for example. I could call him today, and he hasn't gotten out, by the way, though I think he's ready. I'd like to think he's ready. I could call him tomorrow and we can have a 2-hour conversation like no time passed. Brian Beekner, Natalia, George, George, who is one of my bartenders. These guys, I call them and talk business now. We talk about our families. We reminisce about the old days a little bit, but it's like no time passed with most of them. Some of them, I think you would agree, there were a lot of plastic people in that industry. And I think the nightlife changed probably before I left. I mean, in our days when I was working around you and we were going out, it was totally different. There was no bottle service. You could sit wherever you want. You weren't getting pushed around by security. You could come and have a good time. What's funny is I remember when bottle service started. I remember Eric Canonico sitting down with Mike Milner and telling him why he needs to have VIP tables and sell bottles. And he had ideas about, I'm sure Eric remembers, little dance floors. And this was long before either of us worked at studio. We were probably both underage at the time. And Mike Milner was like, that's a terrible idea. Nobody's going to buy a bottle at a table. Fast forward 10 years, that's the only thing you can do is buy a bottle at a table. I mean, I would joke after I left nightlife that I'm not stepping foot in a nightclub unless I have a table and a free bottle. Otherwise, it's just too much of a hassle.
Yeah, it is. I literally think bottle service kind of ruined the social fun of stuff of like going out. Because we used to just do laps and talk to people and meet people. And now you're stuck at your table. You might talk to the people next to you on this side or this side, but other than that, you're not really engaging with a lot of people. And especially now, everyone just stares at their phone and just, waits for it to be over.
Well, thank God we didn't have cell phone cameras back then.
It's a good thing and a bad thing. I would love to see some of the old footage. There's a lot of nights that I'm sure I don't remember that I had a blast, and I would love to go back and watch those videos. But yes, there's also a lot of things I'm very happy there's no evidence anywhere in the world of.
Yeah. Best time of my life. I wouldn't change it, wouldn't go back, but I can tell you there's a lot of those things I would not do today. But what a great
the fact that we made it out and we're still relatively healthy and happy and everything is very commendable.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a night I was telling you last night, I still lived in the dorms at UNLV. I was at Utopia on the patio, and I met some rich guy that had a bunch of girls with him, and I was chatting him up, and we were hanging out, listening to music on the patio. And he was like, I'm going to get a table in the VIP room. Remember when they built that glass VIP room downstairs?
Yep.
You want to come hang out with us? I was like, sure, whatever. I mean, we were just doing loops and talking and having a good time. And so I went in the VIP room with him. Turns out it was a fight night, the night that Tyson bit Holyfield's ear off. And you know how fight nights were in Las Vegas back then. The club was packed. He ended up getting a table. They didn't want to let me in at first because they only wanted girls in. And the guy gave, you remember Ryan?
Yeah.
He gave Ryan like $200 to let us all in. And so we get a table. So I'm at one table. Right across from me is Kid Rock and some guy. And then at the end is LL Cool J and his crew. And then about 5 minutes later, this really tall guy walks in, and I looked up and I was like, oh my God, that's Evander Holyfield. It was like 3 hours after he fought. And he came in and he was sitting with LL Cool J at the table. And then LL Cool J's manager came over, was hanging out with us. And Haim was on the other side of the glass, like, what the heck, man? Can't you get me in there? And they wouldn't let anyone else in. And that was one of the most fun nights that I remember that you could only experience in Vegas at that point in time. Because they had police officers with them that were private security for them in full uniform. And we became a part of their crew for the night. So it was just an unbelievable experience. I probably have 24 nights like that. That's the one I remember the most. And I remember calling my dad the next day and saying, you'll never know, you'll never guess who I was hanging out with in the VIP room last night. And he was always really supportive and thought it was super fun. Deep down, he was probably concerned that I was out till 10 in the morning, but he never told me he was.
Yeah, that's like the funnest parts about, especially us in Vegas, because we had so many celebrities coming in. I mean, I ran into Tyson a bunch of times, hanging out. Super nice guy, by the way, as long as he doesn't bite your ear off. But super, super nice, sweetest guy in person. You know, all the crazy stories, and you know, we can go into a lot of celebrity stuff, which I won't talk about. But even just the times that we had, like that whole nightlife, like you said, is so special that you can't duplicate that again. Now there's like everything went corporate. There's so many more rules and structures and bottle service. It kind of ruined all of it, like all that freedom. And like I said, perfect word is innocence. The innocence that we had back then. Mm-hmm. I mean, we used to treat your Studio 54 like the old Studio 54. Like all the stuff we did there would have got kicked out, arrested, you know, God knows what now. Mm-hmm. So so you think you would go back? Like if you could do it all over again, would you go back like for the same amount of time? I think you'd get out earlier, or what would you change?
I wouldn't change a thing. Best time in my life. Learned a lot about myself. Learned a lot about what I was not willing to do, what I was not willing to put up with. I mean, we talk about the toxic relationships we had. You know, there's one in particular I would have ended on the first day if I could go back, but I think that defines who I am today. And I learned a lot about what I'm willing to live with and what I'm not willing to live with. And when I inevitably did start dating Amy, I was a much healthier partner in a relationship, and I communicated differently, and I knew what was important to me, and she was all of those things. And I don't think I would have known that right away if I hadn't have gone through the terrible relationships and the heartache and the embarrassment of some of these relationships. And I'm sure you had a few when you finally ended them. Your friends were like, thank God, thought you would never end that.
Yes.
You're back. But I think it's important to go through those dark times and those toxic times because it helps you see the bright times better. And again, it helps you really know deep inside what you're willing to accept and what you're not. And you're not going to grow as a person, as a business person, as a father, as a husband, if you don't know what you're willing to live with and what you're not willing to live with, and mature ways of communicating those things. I was not mature back then. It was. What do you mean you're mad at me for still being in contact with my ex-girlfriend? It's not like I'm doing anything wrong. Why does that bother you? The insecurity level is insane in that industry.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the insecurity, the narcissism, the ego-ness. I mean, all of it really is unhealthy. Mm-hmm. You know, just like you said, I mean, being a bartender, you're like, you know, you're surrounded by people. Everyone wants you. Like, I mean, it's a huge ego booster. Mm-hmm. You know, just like, you know, VIP hosts at the front door of like the #1 nightclub. You know, those guys I think have the biggest egos. But I mean, it can go to your head. Like that stuff doesn't translate well, like in corporate world or later in life. Like you go into get out of nightlife with that same ego and that same mentality, you're not going to get very far.
And it's not real. It's all fake. These nightclubs have a shelf life. So that nightclub closed. Yeah, you were the biggest, baddest doorman with all the connections in the world. What are you doing now?
Yeah.
You know, and I like to pride myself that I always treated everybody the same, and I'm sure I had some drunken nights where I was obnoxious. I'm certain I did, but I feel like I was never an asshole to people, and I maintained friendships and relationships, and that's translated to where I am today. You know, you and Eric had that saying, is just don't be an asshole. There's no truer statement than that. Just one of the biggest developers in the world who I look up to. He owns Panettone Development Company, and he has a couple of policies in his company, and the biggest one is no jerks. I don't care how much money you make, you're not going to be a jerk in my company. And I run my company the same way. Chaim and I have a policy that I don't care how big of a broker you are, I don't care how much money you make. If you're toxic and you make our other agents or employees feel uncomfortable and you're a bully, you're out. We call it a public hanging. Because if you don't get that person out, then it's toxic to every single other person in your company. And now you got a much bigger problem to deal with.
I agree. That's awesome. That's like, treat the janitor with the same respect you treat the CEO.
100%. And being a germaphobe, the janitor is way more important than the guy that's a big banging broker if he's a jerk.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true. What so you said you had to have Brad write your resignation for you.
Yeah. I think it had to do with anxiety, and that, as you know, it's just so hard to leave. That place was my identity for so long. And I knew I was ready. I knew it was time. I had the knee injury, so I was going to be off for a couple months anyways. I wanted to take that opportunity to start my life, really start my life. And I was sitting with Brad at the cantina in between a happy hour shift and a shift at studio. And I said, get your computer. I need you to help me write this letter because I'm just not going to do it. I will find anything else I can do but that until I have nothing else to do. He's like, all right, let's do it. So he actually wrote it. He printed it at the cantina, and I brought it in, and I knew I had to just hand it to Jeremy right then and there. Otherwise I wasn't going to do it. And best decision I ever made. You, like I said, it's such a gift to have that skill set to where you could bartend at night and get yourself through the lean times until you start making income in whatever the career is that you choose. But I wasn't really 100% focused on my career until I shut that faucet off. Because at that point it was feast or famine.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people say too. Like if you're trying to juggle both, you're not fully committed to either one. So neither one of them is getting your full attention or your ability. It's not until you have your back up against a wall where you show you can really put yourself in a situation where you have to succeed. There's no other choice.
Yep. And I've had plenty of times where I've had less than $20 in my account, and I've had 3 deals that are about to close. And if those 3 deals didn't close, I'd be calling somebody for a bartending shift. And thankfully, at least 1 out of the 3 would close, and I would get by for another month. And there was a lot of perseverance. And my dad tells me I have ice water running through my veins. He's like, I don't know how you do what you do. And the reality is every year I end up making way more than I would make if I had a salaried job through someone else, and I have all the flexibility in the world. And now being an owner of my company, it's a total different set of responsibilities, and we're responsible for all of those lives and their paychecks every 2 weeks. And I wouldn't change it for the world. It's an honor to have those responsibilities.
That's awesome. And then that's what a lot of people need to understand. Like, if you've been a bartender, cocktail waitress, whatever, for so long, it's so easy that once you hit a couple of speed bumps or, challenges trying to get out, oh, I'm just going to go back for, 6 months, for a year, whatever, and make some money and try to get back out. It's just a vicious cycle. You keep ending up going back because it's comfortable. It's easy. You can make money off it. I mean, I'm not saying, everyone needs to pay their bills and survive, but you got to get rid of that safety net in order to really push yourself forward to propel into the future.
Yeah, I actually, at some point in there, might have been when I left studio, I was also running my dad's Las Vegas operation for his catering company. So that meant doing the shopping at Costco and ordering all the food for the events. It was going to the storage unit, getting everything, setting everything up, the scheduling, the hours of all the employees, all of that while I was trying to learn real estate, and I was still at the cantina for some shifts. I did all the iHeartRadio concerts. I ran all of the bars for my dad. And I think at that point is where I really realized how disgusted I was with nightlife. And Eric was gracious enough to help me get a bunch of female bartenders for those bars because that's what iHeart wanted. And nothing turned me off more than a conversation with those bartenders, and their expectations were unrealistic. And I think Eric might have set some unrealistic expectations that they're going to make a ton of money. This was a free bar with celebrities and stuff, but you're on the side of the stage at iHeart. They were stealing bottles of liquor. They were, taking their breaks whenever they wanted. And I remember one particular event. I worked for 13 hours on my feet, and I ate, like, I'd walk by the buffet and grab something and eat it while I was walking. And these chicks were just like sitting around, taking breaks, taking turns. And I was like literally bar backing all of the bars while I was the one running the event. And their attitudes. I was like, don't come back. That night I went to my dad and said, I love you. I'll support you in any way I can, but this is 1 year notice. You need to find somebody else to do this event next year. And he ended up talking my sister into doing it, who's an attorney, by the way, but she had fun with it. And, she had the same experience as me, maybe not with bars, but certainly with the catering company. And she had fun with it, but it was not fun for me. It was miserable. And that was like a defining moment where I said, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, I bartended EDC. I bartended Life is Beautiful, so I know exactly what you're talking about. When the people come in with these really high expectations, and then they're not doing it, and they just kind of don't do the
And
work.
those festivals are tough, man. You get used to your bar where your ice machine's behind you, your walk-ins behind you, everything's right there, and then you go do a festival, and the ice might be 300 yards away through people, and your storage room is 300 yards away through people, and you're carrying beer over your head and ice buckets over your head, and no fun.
Oh yeah. Well, when I did EDC, I flew in from San Diego. I remember I stayed at my mom's house because she lived closest to EDC, and I knew I was out at the racetrack for, I don't know, 14 hours, 16 hours a day. I was literally going to work all day long, coming home, crashing for maybe 6 hours, go back all day and night, go back, crash for 6 hours, go back. I took 3 days off of work to come do it because I knew I could make some quick, easy money for 3 days, and then flew back to San Diego and then went back to my normal job. But that was brutal.
I don't think you could talk me into doing that today.
No, me neither.
I went to EDC one night 2 years ago. One of my biggest clients, who's become a great friend, does all of the sound and lighting for the two main stages. So it was a different experience. We drove in the crew vans right into the back door, walked under the stage and out. It was great. It was super fun. I got home at 3 a.m. Thankfully, my wife and kids were visiting her parents in Tucson, so I could sleep all day the next day. And all I did was drink alcohol. It took me 2 days to recover just from the hours, because I don't stay up past 10 p.m. anymore. And I'm in bed by 9 usually. And just to be out till 3, 4 in the morning, it like ripped my soul out.
Yeah, once you make that lifestyle change, and then like I couldn't imagine going out now because I got invited out a couple weeks ago. Like, oh, we're gonna go to some club. I'm like, what time you guys meeting up? Oh, like 11. I'm like, I haven't stayed up that late in a long time. You guys are meeting at 11.
It's funny is how your mind shifts. I think it was about 8 years ago. Chaim and I went to a client dinner at Wynn, and after the dinner, we walked by Excess. And Natalia was standing out front. I stopped just to say hi to her. She's an old friend. We used to go on all kinds of trips with Brian and all of our friends from studio. And so I'm chatting with her, and I had like 4 guys with me. And she's like, you guys want to come in? The line was like a mile long. It wrapped like all the way through Encore, wrapped around. Everybody wanted to get in. She said, you guys want to come in? And I was like, no, we're good. She's like, really? Nobody tells her no, they don't want to come in, especially when it's Natalia who can just walk you right in. And no, not interested. Thanks, though. I appreciate the offer. I'm going to go home and go to bed because I have to work in the morning. It was a Wednesday or something. I don't remember which night they were busy there. But it just, your mind shifts. It's not a priority anymore. I don't want to hang out with a bunch of people that I don't know. And it's crowded and security's pushing you around. And it's just, that doesn't seem fun at all to me anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy. Remember back in the day, we're all about it. Nowadays, we're like, it's like, it makes me cringe.
I didn't want to miss out on anything back in the day.
No.
Now I just want to be at home.
It's funny. Think about that mile long line. All those people would have traded places with you in a heartbeat, and you're turning down offers. Like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, it's nice to see you though. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. See you again in another 8 years when I'm walking past.
Yeah, I still drink, but I drink differently. I'm not drinking Jaeger out of a bottle or Mandarin out of a bottle, which I can't even smell anymore. Now I'm like, I have a high end whiskey collection and a tequila collection, and we drink good wine, and I drink tequila and whiskey on the rocks, and it's just different. It's not, I don't take shots. I'm not raging. I have nothing to prove to anyone. If I'm out to dinner and somebody orders a round of shots, I'm sipping on it because I'm enjoying it. I don't really see the point of shots. I have a theory that all shots do is ring up your bar tab and increase your hangover. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
just my
true.
age.
I, I can imagine thinking back to all the nights where we do 10, 15, 20 shots plus drinking bottle service. I'm like, how did I even manage to do that?
I just was reminded of a SoCo lime shot and I gagged. Like
Oh, I remember those. Yeah,
lemon drops and
it's
oh,
so funny how like certain shots have like their like highlight for like a season or something. Like
why
Washington
would we
apples were
do that
huge.
to ourselves? Why would we put sugary lime syrup in SoCo, which is crappy whiskey to begin with, and think that that was good?
Oh God, remember like black sambuca shots and like surfer on acids, Washington apples. I mean, all the sugar and crap
Washington.
we're doing. Like, and I mean, in her 20s and stuff, the hangover's not bad. Nowadays, that would take me down for a week, 2 weeks.
We we used to behind our bar and every bar except for VIP bar because VIP bar had cameras. The other three bars in our walk-ins, there would be certain liquors that were lined up and stored in the walk-in. And we would always just say, well, there wasn't enough room on the shelf, so we had to fit some in the walk-in. But it just so happened it was all of the liquors that we liked that were in the walk-in, and there'd be 6 bottles lined up, and the back one was always open. So I mean, at least twice a night, Eric would come behind my bar, hit the Jaeger or the Mandarin or whatever we were into that week. All of the bartenders, we'd go back to get a case of Bud Light. We'd hit the bottle, and it was what kept us going. And again, that's not something I would change. It was an amazing time in my life. I thank God I never got pulled over and got a DUI on the way home or hurt anyone. But man, we had a blast. It was a blast. It feels like a different lifetime.
It really does too. I mean, even though it was only what, 10, 15 years ago, it feels like lifetimes ago.
It was, and we were probably the most corporate of all of the nightclubs, but we produced so much revenue for MGM Grand that they left us alone. And I remember at one point, there was some stink about they were questioning if we were ringing things in right. And we didn't have the software like Pure or all the other places had where it actually would come up on the camera what you were ringing up and they could count to make sure you had as many drinks. We didn't have that. When they opened, what was the show at MGM? It's still
Uh, Beecher? No, not Beecher's. That was
there.
later.
The Cirque show with the stage that tilts.
Humanity.
No, Humanity's not at MGM.
Um,
I'm drawing a blank. But when they opened that show, they decided they had a limited amount of VCRs or recording devices. They decided that it was more important to record those bartenders that maybe had 30-minute rushes a night and the rest of the time they were standing there over us who were 8 hours straight of 3-4 deep. I mean, I think Brian was ringing $6,000 to $8,000 consistently every night. I mean, it was nuts. And they didn't have any recording devices on us. And obviously, we were ringing enough and doing the proper counts and dropping our banks correctly and all that. But they had nothing on us because they decided that it was more important to record those bartenders than us.
it,
I don't think they would have found anything, by the way, but we certainly had a lot of freedom and a lot of comps.
do you remember what drink prices were back then?
Yeah, beers were $5.25, and then quickly after that, we got rid of change, so they became $6. I think by the time I left, local beers were 8, and domestics were 8, and imports were maybe 9. Drinks when I first started were $5.50 for well, $6.50 for call, $7.50 for premium. I think they were up to like 14 when I left. I'm sure they're a lot more now.
No, that's like, I was talking to somebody the other day about just the evolution of like pricing. Like to say the same Sky vodka and cranberry juice at the Hard Rock back when I was a bar back was like 450. Now that same Sky vodka and cranberry juice is like 12 bucks. Like you can't tell me Sky vodka and cranberry juice is like gotten that much more expensive.
That bottle of Sky is still $11.
Yeah, no, it's like $8 now wholesale.
I remember at Dre's, they would pour those huge drinks, like they were like this big. And Dan Beal told me that they were actually encouraged to pour heavy because that was their thing, but they were using that cheap vodka. And he said that the bottle of vodka was like $9 and the first drink was like 11. So they turned a profit on the first drink. So they didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, today you're using a jigger and they're counting every ounce and marking bottles. And we didn't have any of that. We had total freedom. If you came to my bar, I could give you 10 drinks and not even walk to the register and no one would even notice.
Yeah, we used to joke like the Hard Rock Center bar, the shot was a 6-ounce shot. Anything you order is a 6-ounce shot.
Yeah. I mean, my wife used to come in and I'd give her a little bottle of Perrier. And she's like, I don't want soda water. And I'm like, that's not soda water. That's Cristal.
Pouring Cristal in Perrier bottles.
Yeah.
I love it.
If I was the bar owner, I probably wouldn't be happy, but we were generating a lot of revenue and having a lot of fun. And I probably wouldn't do those type of things today. I think my moral compass is in a complete different place. And I believe heavily in karma, and what's yours is yours and what's theirs is theirs. And but at that time everyone was doing it. We were total freedom. It's not like my managers didn't know what was going on. They were back there hitting the bottle of Mandarin with us. But we made a lot of money for MGM Grand. It wasn't, it's not like we were draining on them.
Yeah, I'm wondering if like the evolution of the cost of booze and stuff has gone up because like the cost of entertainment and the cost of corporate structure and everything. Because back then it was you made a profit off the first drink you sold, so it was okay. But now drinks have gone up so much, but now DJ prices are so much. Like how much was Studio 54 paying for a DJ back then?
$1,000 a night.
Yeah, so they didn't have like the $100,000 DJs and all that stuff that all the clubs do now.
No, on holiday weekends we did, but we had our set DJs that were almost on salary. They were on Frankie's salary. Great DJs. There were 3 or 4 staples, and they had a format that they played, and they made their wage. But there was not. I think towards the end we brought in Loxy and some other guys. I'm sure Loxy was not only $1,000, but maybe 5,000 a night. Not like Win that's paying 300,000-400,000 a night, and it's just not sustainable.
No, I remember we had Tiesto at Babies for $5,000.
Oh, back in the day.
Yeah,
that was my favorite club, by the way.
I used to
love Babies.
So much fun. What's some advice you'd give to anybody else that's looking to get out of the industry?
I think the biggest thing I can say is if you're not having fun anymore, it's time to make a change. And, one of my mentors told me early on that if you're not waking up in the morning excited to go to work, he used some other words that, but I won't say because we're going to be public here. If you're not excited to go to work, what's the point? Find something else. And if you want it, you can do it. You just have to work hard and focus. And there's not a whole lot of focus in the nightlife industry. It's an honest living. It's a great living. And if you're young and having fun, do it until you can't, but prepare. I don't regret spending all the money I spent. When I stopped bartending, I had a motorcycle, a dirt bike, 2 quads, a trailer. Did I need all those things? No, but did I enjoy them at that time in my life? Absolutely. But what I will say is you can do it and you'd be surprised what you can achieve. Happy to help anyone that's looking to get out. I'll take a coffee with anybody at any time and talk about my journey and what I did and make recommendations and make introductions. I'm absolutely happy to do that and support what you're doing, Sean. I think this is wonderful. This has been a lot of fun. Very prideful for me that I got out and I'm doing really well and I'm healthy and I have a wonderful family and my life is sustainable. That lifestyle is not sustainable.
That's
But
awesome.
do it. You're young.
I can attest to, knowing you for the last 20 years that, watching you, remembering the kid that you were and now seeing the man that you are now, man. I'm honored to know you and, watch you go through this whole thing, man. It's awesome.
Thank you. I remember the night I met you. It's C2K. With, we had a mutual friend that I lived in the dorms with.
Yeah.
But it turned out you were already friends with Matt and Eric and all these other people. And that was it. Instant friendship.
Yeah. I mean, and here we are 20 years later, we still all talk to each other. Maybe not every day or whatever, but just like you said, we can pick up the phone and, have a conversation like we didn't skip a beat.
Like no time passed. And I'm always here for you. Call me anytime.
Love that, man. Hey, I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you've done, you're doing, help inspire others and share your story. I appreciate you, buddy.
You got it, my friend. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, bud. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye.